Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times of ours, yours and mine, together. And I honestly am loving my voice. It's my new voice. It's my temporary voice. I had a little bit of a cold this week, and it's allowing me the opportunity to feel a little bit more manly, to be honest, because I can make sounds like this more easily. So everybody, today's episode is all about a great man where I'm interviewing, it's me interviewing my friend and my colleague and my ally, Rafael Guignard from France. He is the future of France. He is the future face. He's the present face of France, but he's the future of France too. I get super inspired every time I talk to him. And he's just an inspiring person in general. In terms of his willingness to open up and share in this podcast, it's a beautiful thing to witness. Wherever you're at in life, he speaks to your phase in life, because we get into his past with pornography, his present in terms of how he's a leader and how he's leveraged his past mistakes to be a great leader now. And he also gets into his vision for the future and how sexuality ties into all of that. It's a very, I don't know, natural conversation. I always feel good when I'm with this guy, and I hope you guys glean some of that beautiful mojo from the air that was there when we were speaking, because today's episode is all about family and the next generation of leadership. And when I meet him more, every time I talk to him, I feel like, you know what, things are going to be okay, because we got leaders like this who are taking the helm and doing great things. So everybody, without further ado, please welcome the great Rafael Guignard. All right. Welcome back, everybody. This is really cool because for me, I like most people in this world. I think there's a few people I'm still struggling to love, but I like most people. But there's a few people that I feel automatically like, oh, my brother, right? And there's one in South America, there's one in Ohio, you know who you are, and there's one in France. And from the second I met this guy, I was like, who is this guy? Why do I feel like I've known him forever? And it's Rafael. And our paths cross, I don't know, once a year, really, honestly, at this point. But you feel very familiar, Rafael, is what I'm trying to say. And you always have. So you feel like a kindred spirit to me. So I'm sorry it took so long to get you on this podcast, but welcome. Welcome to my little environment here online.
Yeah, hey Andrew, thanks for welcoming here. So on my side as well, I think it's also my extra busy schedule makes this happen.
Yeah.
Also feel this connection with you. I remember before we met, I was following you a little bit online. I was like, wow, this is amazing what this guy is doing. Andrew Love, what an amazing name. And I'd like to learn from this guy. I never thought that, I think a few months later, that's when we met in Comeback for the first time. And you gave a high-noon presentation. That was really good. To connect to that.
Yeah, those are crazy days back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now, I mean, back then you were just the lay person might say ping pong player, but a real enthusiast would call it table tennis professional, right? That was your main gig in life.
Yeah, that was my main my main occupation. I was also being a youth leader in the movement in France. But yeah, my main occupation was table tennis player and coach at that time. And today, a part of doing one training just last week, first training in 4 years, it's not so much part of my life anymore.
Yeah, that's wild. That was like you lived and breathed table tennis and coffee. I heard you were really addicted to coffee back then.
Yeah,
I think that's what you said.
Yeah. And I was really addicted. And I think it's only a few months later after we met that I started to being able to reduce my coffee and also to reduce table tennis in my life and shift more into mission and coaching.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so now you are, correct me if I'm wrong, the leader of France.
Yeah, I'm responsible for the Heavenly Parents Holy Community in France, or whatever you call it, education movement. Or Yes, yes, yes. Since January 1st, so it's still very recent, actually. Yeah. Mm-mm.
I think just because we're so new, I've never met another faith community that doesn't know what to call themselves and doesn't know how to end a prayer in the same way as much as our movement. Like a lot of people get stressed out. They forget how to end their prayer, or they just like they start laughing, or they just start mumbling because everybody else is like in Jesus' name, amen, and then they get out. And we kind of linger around, but it's also yeah, are we a church? Are we a whatever? It doesn't, I guess it doesn't matter, and it totally matters, and it totally doesn't matter, you know.
Well, I mean, it's because we're a move. I mean, we're that's why maybe often we call the movement because it's constantly moving. It's so dynamic. It's in constant
Mm.
evolution. Uh, I'm sure that back in the days when there were people directly following Jesus, and I'm sure there were a lot of things that were not so clear and not so standardized either. So yeah,
Yeah.
as you said, it's part of being a young movement. Um, yeah, yeah.
I would imagine many of similar personality types in the early days of Jesus be like, we're not going to be another religion, man. And then they became the Catholic Church for a while. So you are, before you were kind of taking care of Paris, but now you're taking care of France. And so I remember, yeah, first of all, congratulations. And I know this has been, you're kind of always wanting to coach people, to take care of people. And it sounds like you are able to find a way to be sometimes in church leadership, you get bogged down by logistics or events or stuff, but I'm sure that you still prioritize caring for other people because it's just part and parcel who you are. So are you managing to still have a decent chunk of time where you're taking care of people person to person?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a balancing job to do. Yeah, there's definitely lots of responsibilities, things to organize and to manage. Um, but yeah, definitely. First of all, I really still want like to apply to take care of people while I'm actually working with people. So the people I work with. So when we have meetings, we try as often as possible to always have like some check-in time to see how people are doing. So that's a way to care of people while you're actually working together. Um, I like to have personal conversations outside of meetings as well with people I work with as well. And of course, yeah, I really try to have personal conversations with people I'm responsible for, and even beyond. I also continue my work as a coach and energy worker on the side of my mission. And of course, I try to take care of people within my mission. Um, what I've been focusing in this after a really wild first quarter, what I've been focusing on the second quarter is really building teams around different projects and different responsibilities because I realized, all these things, if it all depends on me, it's not gonna work. Um, I'm gonna die, and people are gonna get frustrated because things are not moving forward.
Hmm.
So yeah, in this process, what's happening that it helps for things to move forward while actually I, it's not moving forward because I work more, but because we work more effectively together. And so this gives
Yeah.
also time to take care of people, to be able to do that, to delegate and create teams. Mm-mm.
Yeah, that sounds great. It sounds really healthy, a healthy approach. Um,
Yeah, and this feeling I have is like, we want to make world peace, and I feel like if we're not able to, bring peace already into people's lives, into their families, then we can't. That's it's like it's gonna be a castle of how can a castle of cards? How you say it in English? Yeah,
House of
Chateau de,
Cards.
Chateau de Cards, House of Cards, Chateau de
We're
Cards.
more humble. We don't have so many castles over in America, just cheaply
Uh,
made houses.
so it looks great and everything, but it can crumble very easily. And so
Mm.
it's always like even right now there's a lot going on with Japan, and in France there's going to be a conference next week about religious freedom and religious sociologists who are going to talk about the case of Japan, of our movement, and different other cases of religious minorities. And there's going to be a press conference in France. And I was thinking like, oh, what's most important? Is it to really go out there with the media and make sure people understand and we avoid being persecuted and misunderstood, or is it more important that we actually take care of our movement so that there are actually not so many issues to, that people can point onto and actually persecute us for? And of course, the answer is not this or that. It's some balance there, and that is not easy to find, but important to seek. Mm.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you bring that word to the table in essence, the balance, right? And so, like, when we were discussing the idea that, it's on the table that you might become the leader of France, I was really excited. But at the same time, I know what leadership can do sometimes to people because your life kind of falls out of balance. But then when we had you on the 24-hour summit and I heard you speaking with that same old passion that you're famous for, at least in my books, I was like, oh, this guy's going to be all right. Like, you're not going to ever stop being you. And so I feel like you bring a great deal of needed balance to leadership, and that's what we were just talking about before recording that I said I wanted to include is like the balance that you bring is this hybrid of you get really fired up over providential things. Like you get God and true parents and he's off. He's floating away. There goes Rafael. But also your feet are always on the ground because you're really practical too in terms of coming up with practical solutions, which just came out that you were just saying, like, yeah, if we want world peace, obviously it's like excruciatingly obvious that it should be peaceful in our lives. Otherwise, what are we talking about? What is this peace? So
Yeah.
it's reassuring to know that you're able to manage both sides of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as I say, it's a quest. I remember I went through a personal development workshop last year, and I was working on some limiting belief I had, and the limiting belief I had was I'm not able to fulfill my mission in a balanced and harmonious way. And through that workshop, what I realized that it was really a limiting belief that I created because of so many times trying to do that, actually seeking to fulfill my mission harmoniously, and making mistakes. And I was seeing these mistakes as proof that I was doing it wrong, that I was bad at it, when actually it was just learning experiences for me to get better and better. So yes, I'm so much onto this quest that I realize that I'm constantly, touching the edge on one side or the other, on the edge of like maybe sacrificing a lot and then realizing, whoa, 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 I need to calm down. Then maybe being a bit more in the comfort zone and realizing, wait, and you need to get out there, And it's, and you need to touch these edges a little bit here and there until you kind of find that balance. And even recently, we had Chumada coming for Pentecost in Munich in Europe. It was an amazing gathering. And it was really balanced in many ways. It was balanced first in the organization. I think for the first time we had such a church event where, of course, everything was centered on True Mother, on her speech, on the main Sunday service with her. But there was so many things outside of that for young people, for small kids. There was like a family fair and pony rides and, bouncy castles, wherever. And people meeting with each other. And I felt like, wow, that was actually, I think it was one of the most amazing church events I ever attended. And this way it was balanced. And the other way, I had also an experience is that as a national leader, at one moment, True Mother wanted to meet personally the national leaders. But I knew that like on Friday evening, and I had to be there on Saturday morning. And we were planning to leave on Saturday morning. So I was talking with my wife and it's like, okay, do we just pack and leave and drive through the night to Munich? And we were exhausted at that moment already, just packing and being exhausted. And somehow we decided not to. And then the whole rest of reading, I ended up regretting not going there, not, attending True Mother, not being there in person to represent France and things like this. And so I was going back and forth emotionally about this. And why was I going back and forth? Because there's no straight answer to that. It's a balance to find. So we could have driven through the night, and it would have been maybe great that if I could be there personally to meet True Mother and represent France. But there would have been other consequences. My children, instead of sleeping in their bed, would have slept in the car. They had a wonderful experience in Munich for 2 days. I think if they would have slept in the car, I'm not sure if they would have the same experience. And I know how many children of leaders are resentful today towards them being always sacrificed for, their parents' mission and things like this. And I realized, wow, what's more important? I mean, it's difficult to say, but is it really more important that I'm there with True Mother to represent France? Or is it actually important that I lead in a way so that actually my children want to inherit from me and to continue that path? And hopefully they will be able to do their mission in even a more harmonious way, thanks to the foundation that our parents already did, that I'm
Sure.
really grateful for, and thanks to the sacrifices we still need to make. Hopefully, they will be able to do less and less, And so that was a very interesting experience of having this internal fight about finding that balance and actually um, realizing how different choices, of course, have different consequences.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that really, with our high noon work, the idea of finding harmony with yourself is a constant negotiation, because that idea that you mentioned of winning or losing, we can feel like we're losing, and that can kind of cause us to spiral, or to use that, like you said, as an example for, see, I'm a failure, look, see, because you're looking for evidence, when in fact sometimes there is no full win, but you gotta make a choice, and that's just kind of life. And yeah, balance isn't always equal all the time. Sometimes you have to be imbalanced in order to maintain a longer trajectory of balance, like short-term imbalance for longer-term balance. So I like that. Thank you. That was a good conversation on balance. I don't think I've ever talked for that long on balance before. It's usually like, are you balanced or not? So one thing everybody should know is the first time we all met Rafael together as a High Noon staff, we were in France having the most delectable meal ever, because all meals in France are the best meal ever. And you came in and you were just really open about your life and about sex and your views, and like really emphatic. Like, you blew Uncle Dave away, because we don't experience that a lot. So he was immediately like smitten with, who is this guy? Um, but that's you now. You seemed very open about your opinions about sex, about, trials and tribulation, about your own past with pornography. But I'd like to start with the past and find out, like, I'm always curious, because I didn't grow up in a religious community, but like, you're young, you're athletic, you're a good looking guy. Like, how is it that you survived high school and not getting into dating, or the same pitfalls that are so
Mm,
tempting for all young people? How is it that you managed to make it to the blessing and have a blessed family yourself?
yeah. Yeah, it's a really good question. As you said, it's definitely not an easy path, and I'm wondering myself how I think it's really a miracle. uh, and I think there's two big aspects of how, of course, um, or maybe even three. But I'd say the first aspect that I really felt God was guiding and protecting me, because at one moment I was really challenging everything that the church was saying, everything that my parents were saying, even like including drugs and alcohol. I was trying everything when I was a teenager and everything. But somehow it was so clear in my mind that I only wanted to have one person in my life. Like, even I wasn't sure if I want to go get matched and blessed by two parents. I didn't know if they were the Messiah or whatever. But I knew somehow that this was like, yeah, this is what I want. And it didn't seem like a burden that I can only know one person in my life. No, it was like, no, this is the most beautiful thing ever. And I don't know how. And of course,
Hmm.
and I think the second point is that our movement and my parents planted that seed inside me, and somehow it took root. It took root, and I think, when you do drug and alcohol, you get into dangerous situations, and even in those dangerous situations, God protected me. So I think there's definitely these two aspects. The education I was giving, God being there along the way to guide and protect me, and really make this feel that this is the most important thing. Um, and the third thing is, of course, myself also being focused, I think, on table tennis, being focused on the project and not just, being leading a party life, like a complete party life and things like this. I think that was very helpful, because I was, you had to be disciplined to succeed. And I even could see how some of my mates my teammates or things like this, once they started dating or having a girlfriend, their performance and their studies, everything was starting to mess up because
Oh,
that was
that's
even
interesting.
like a proof for me to continue on my path. And I remember I was arguing with my friends about, it's like, oh, Rafael, how come don't have a girlfriend, and how come? And I was saying, no, I will only want to have a serious relationship. And they're like, what? And I remember I was very, I wouldn't talk about the church or God, whatever, but I was talking religiously about this. Um, but of course, it doesn't mean it was easy. No, of course, yeah, there were situations where people were sharing, that they felt attracted to me, things like this. Of course, feeling attracted as a boy is also normal. Feeling attracted to other people, but because it was so clear, so important, it never went, um, somewhere far and things like this. So somewhere
Can
that's
you
really.
describe that? Like, if you ever got into a situation, especially when you find out somebody likes you, it's like it fills you up with such a great sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in the short term, right? That, wow, somebody likes me. But you also have this vision. Some people could see that as dissonance between your vision, which is kind of mind, and then your heart, which is just all feelings. But did you also, more than just have a sense of vision, you had like a relationship with this idea of being with one person forever? Had you already kind of romanticized it and fed it with enough energy for it to feel worth sacrificing for? Or was it just the concept that was really strong in your mind?
That's a really good question. I mean, I feel like uh, in Hollywood movies, you all have all kind of stories, but I always felt very attracted to those who try to be mostly the true love stories. The one person, the one soulmate. And I always hated the movies that where there was like mixed up situation. One guy, two girls, one girl, two guys, and hesitation. And I know so many people like they were like, oh yeah, finally they chose the person of their heart. And but for me, as soon as there was hesitation between people, I was like, ah. So, but I felt very attracted when I saw movies where it was very clear, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, in this way, I think I was nurturing that already, and it was not just like some concept. In this way, movies can be very powerful and helpful. Of course, if you know how to maybe select what seems right for you. Uh, and yeah, one thing that happened to me is a few. I think I remember two or three times as a teenager, or just turning adult. I had to be very firm with certain girls about my values. And I remember I was not. It was somehow hurtful. At the end, I could understand and respect that, but it's not easy to be firm because you're afraid to hurt, and you can actually hurt. But at the end, that's it's also their responsibility to feel hurt or not by this, because it's about your values. It's not against them. Um, and yeah, and I know that some second gen struggle with that, with being firm, and because of being afraid to hurt, got into very complicated situations, and which is understandable, but yeah, not yeah, definitely not a good place to be in. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
for sure. It's like breaking up with somebody that you aren't even together with. It's all the bad stuff and none of the good stuff.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
good way of saying it. Yeah.
yeah, I can see that. Nobody wants to be the bad guy, and you feel like the bad guy when you got to make a call like that. But it's protecting yourself, right? And so, what you're talking about is more in the realm of love and kind of romance. But growing up, what about your understanding of sexuality and your education, like in the church and in your house about sexuality? Was it clear that like the vision to save yourself, or was there any nuance discussed, or was it just all fear based, or what was your kind of education growing up?
I mean, it was mixed. There was basically this whole concept about if you have a sexual relationship out of the blessing or everything like this, then of course it's you're fallen, and it's the ultimate failure you can have in your life. There was definitely this education, but there was also the education of, as I was sharing, this beautiful thing that you can build by keeping your purity, by preparing yourself for marriage and things like this. So there was like a bit like when we say the carrot and the stick, both sides, and
Yeah.
I think I was lucky that I don't know if I received a lot more about the carrot, or I just focused more on the carrot than on the stick, which helped me to kind of pursue that lifestyle in a joyful way, and not like I have to, because somebody obliges me, or because I'm afraid of things
Mm.
like this. Um, yeah.
But is that sexuality was expressed in the like it can be a joyful thing once you're blessed kind of thing, or just relationships in general?
Yeah. I remember very clearly. I was part of. I did the PLA rallies, the Pure Love Alliance rallies.
Hmm.
I think that was back in late '90s, early 2000s, or something like this. It started in the US, and they came to Europe, and we also had some PLA rallies. I remember um, there was a slogan we were yelling, in the streets, and I was just like a teenager, like 14 or 15, whatever. But I was like, really, oh, this is great slogans. It was like, I think it was like um, something like there was one part of the slogan was like, sex is great, and you can see it's for man and woman and the whole family, or something like this, and I remember that resonated with me, like, so I
Mm.
really stuck with me. Sex is great as long as it's for the purpose of building that a loving family, and
Mm.
yeah, I resonate much more with that than why, and even like I get to the place when I was at university. One moment, I attended. I was studying philosophy, but then I had some English classes. And in English class, I decided to follow a class on public speaking. And on one moment, we had to do a persuasive speech of 8 minutes about a topic that we wanted. But I don't know why, but I was really into that stuff. I gave a speech about the benefits of abstinence before marriage. You know, to
In
the university
France.
in France, in a very left-wing university. um, so that
Did you
was very
persuade
interesting.
anybody?
Actually, I mean, there was a lot of Muslim students there, and they were like,
Oh,
"Wow,
nice.
it's the first time we hear a white guy talking about, purity and all these kind of terms." They were like, "Wow, mind blowing for them."
Nice.
Not everyone was present, because on the same class there was a girl who made a presentation of how we should allow people to change their, I think, their gender on their ID card. When they transform their body, they should be able to change, so if a woman starts to look like a man, they should be able to change their F female to M male, whatever, something like
Yeah.
this. And she showed her a picture of a man being pregnant, a man being with a beard being pregnant, and how beautiful this is. And she had like a pin saying sex work is work. So like the total other side of the spectrum
Yeah.
in the same class. Um, but I was really, inspired to give this speech, and also to tell my story. I started with the story, like how it was difficult for me to live that, because I was always criticized and mocked and everything while trying to live that lifestyle. But then I was
Yeah.
sharing, at that time I was blessed, and I was sharing how beautiful, how happy I am in a couple now. So I could really share, yeah, and I'm so happy that I don't have to think about my past relationships and this and that, uh, that I hear many other people are struggling with when they're, even when they get into maybe a better relationship or more serious relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No baggage.
Mm-mm-mm.
Uh, so then how does it work? Because at some point, it seems like your mind is really clear. You know what you want. In terms of like a long-term relationship, you're beating off women with a stick. You're keeping them away, protecting yourself. And yet at some point, the inevitable happens and you're exposed to porn and you start building a relationship with this thing that is clearly the opposite of how you're expressing your life as in terms of like what you want it to be. So how did that work, and what was that inner conflict like?
Yeah, I think that was, I mean, I think that was, I don't know if that, maybe it was the most difficult conflict I have had in my life, because it's so difficult when you have these high ideals, these big visions that you really believe in, that you really care for. It's not just some concept and you really care deeply in your heart about it, but somehow you get into this thing that is highly addictive, and no matter how much you want to do something different, you completely lose control over something. You lose control of your, what you're doing. It's such a difficult place to be. Yeah, there's so much shame and so much guilt, and some of that shame and guilt is healthy, because otherwise you would just, yeah, let's continue. What's the problem? But
Sure.
then, but drowning in that shame and guilt and not sharing with anyone about it, not seeking out help. And at that time, there was no high noon. There was some. We had lectures, of course, and workshops about purity, but there was more about stay pure. There was not so much about how how to do it when it's difficult.
Sure.
Things like this. There was that came little by little. Luckily. Um, but yeah, that was very, very, very difficult. Of course, I was hiding. When I get uh, into porn addiction and masturbation, I was hiding it from my parents, and of course there were periods where, like, okay, I refrain from this. This is not what I believe in. But then you would get into the vicious cycle again, where it's very difficult and you can't control yourself. And yeah, I think, of course, one turning point was when I actually clarified my faith. Because as I was sharing, I always believed in that one relationship, but at that time, my faith in God and your parents, whatever, was not so clear. But then once I actually found my faith, then somehow it gave me a lot more strength to, work on this fight. And also, then, of course, the second point was not just to connect to God, but also to connect to someone else. So when I was about to go to STF, I remember sharing, honestly, with my father, and I was scared to death. I was like, I remember sitting at the kitchen table, telling my father I have something to say, and it's like, like in the Matrix, the movie in the Matrix, the moment suddenly Neo, he has no mouth anymore, he cannot speak anymore. Like it's like he's trying to
Yeah.
speak, and the agent makes him, and it's like it felt like this. I'm like, I want to say it, but it's like it's stuck. But finally, and then first, actually, what comes out first is tears. Actually, it's not even the words. First, the tears. um, but then that's a process of releasing the pressure and then actually being able to speak out. And
Mm.
so when I was able to speak, I was so lucky, because I know it's not everyone's experience, that my father was so embracing, so understanding. And it's not the first time he actually did it. I think he did it also when I did some crazy stuff with alcohol. At a moment I did some crazy stuff with alcohol at the tournament, table tennis tournament. I almost died from alcohol, drinking too much alcohol in a short amount of time. And I remember he was like very surprised of my attitude, but he didn't judge me. It's like, oh, I trust you. You will learn from your experiences. So very embracing. And then again, when I came up with this issue, he was also very embracing, and I felt like that was very helpful. He was kind of, I experienced God's grace through him, uh, and overcoming the shame and guilt, and just trying to start new, starting fresh, having a second chance. Um, Again, and when going to STF, we had a great meeting with the STF leader at that time, Telmo Saraiva, and he had a very clear meeting with all the brothers. Like, he asked just very clearly, like, I came to STF thinking I'm the worst second gen ever in history.
Mm. Hmm.
Worst doesn't exist. I had no clue about how most second gen are going through the same thing as me at that time. But then he was asking, like, oh, and he asked me this simple question, like, oh, who never masturbated? And so, like, 50 guys in the room, and then, like, two very timid hands raised. And I was like, oh wow, I had no idea. And that, of course, also helped you again to overcome that shame and guilt, and realize, wow, I'm not the only one struggling with that. I'm not the extremely bad guy struggling with that. Of course, it doesn't mean that it's not important to overcome it and just say, oh, everybody's struggling with it, let's
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
takes away this feeling that I'm the absolute failure, and it's just me. um yeah, yeah.
So
So
how long was the period of time when you kind of started watching, built a relationship with porn, and then when you told your dad? How long were you holding on to this double
if I,
life?
I think about I would say 4 or 5 years. I would
Wow.
say, yeah. Yeah, maybe five or something like this. Yeah, can't say exactly. 4 to 6 years. Yeah, so that was thing. And the other thing, of course, what was I think what was more difficult actually was after I went through finding my faith, getting blessed, starting family, and being very clear, um, is actually falling into it again. Because as because why was it so difficult to follow it again? Is because even though I kind of learned to accept that okay, most teenagers go through it, most second gen go through it as a teenager. It was very difficult for me to accept that I went through it again as a husband and as a father. I was like, how can you? How that's unacceptable, that's unforgivable, that's and I had no clue that again other people in the same situation for me, like we were still in this concept that after you get blessed, there's everything is going to be
Just
beautiful and there's no
magical. Yeah.
and nothing, there's no way going back, like
Yeah.
it's not going to happen, but so that was even more difficult, and again it took about, yeah, 4 or 5 years until, through some, I think, circumstances, I was able to actually share with my wife, and then she supported me. It was, of course, very painful and very difficult for her, and I'm still now to that day very sorry about, how it made her feel at that time. But despite that, she was able to forgive me and to support me to overcome it again a second time. And I'm very happy that since that moment, that was like in 2015, I was able to stay clean around this issue. But one thing that helped me a lot this time compared to the other time is that I decided to be forever vigilant. Because the first time I overcame it, I was like, yeah, now I'm all powerful. I'm never gonna struggle again. Satan can't have me on this hook again, whatever. And of course, when you start to be filled with that ego or pride, that's the one where you get easily snapped again. So now I decided to be very humble and say, despite the fact that I feel like I've overcame this, my decision is I'm eternally vigilant. I don't know if
Mm.
we might struggle this in spiritual, but I just decided to be an eternal commitment of being vigilant.
Yeah. Well, I think intentionality feels like discipline here, but when you have kind of control of your faculties, intentionality is just like, where do I want to put my energy? And it's not a struggle as much as a joy to like, where do I want to experience joy? Here, it's like where there's a resistance to not put your intentionality towards stupid things that are going to kill you or hurt the world around you because we're still fixing stuff, right? So I could picture, intentionality being something that we always have to work on eternally, in spirit world, whatever that looks like, um, as more of a joyful thing, right? But that's,
Mm,
you have some really great people in your life,
yeah,
your wife and your dad being able to support you in this.
yeah,
Um,
and I remember that's were life-changing moments. These two moments are life-changing moments because
hmm,
these are the moments where I really felt the most God's grace through people. I remember I was doing a meditation moment, and the guy guiding the meditation was saying like, connect yourself to God's unconditional love. And remember a moment where you felt loved unconditionally. And immediately these two moments where I shared honestly, I was transparent, and I gave people and God to give grace. This is
hmm,
actually the opportunity to actually experience true love. I experienced true love really right there. So it's what's amazing there is that no matter how difficult it is, it can actually be an opportunity to experience something very deep. Of course, if we not have to go through this, it's better. But
yeah.
once we're there, uh, it can also be an opportunity for something beautiful to happen. And actually, I can say that since we overcame that struggle, my relationship with my wife has been only become better. It grow deeper. We share more honestly, more transparently, more deeper on an ongoing basis. Um, Even now that sometimes our schedules are very filled, we always take time to share, on the regular basis. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
And so you worked on yourself before the blessing, and then you still had issues pop up kind of after, which you mentioned. But because there's a lot of people that I I don't want to get into it, the reasons why, but there's different education, let's say, about the importance of actually working on yourself practically prior to the blessing, whereas other people have this worldview that just get to the blessing and you'll figure things out later. Do you think it was easier for you to get through the second crisis that you had, that you said was even more intense now that you're blessed, now that you have kids, because you had already done this once before with your dad, that you knew that you weren't going to get killed or, shoved in a box, or that God's grace is real?
Hey, just a quick interruption to tell you about the 40-day High Noon Challenge. If you're trying to find a way to start living a high noon life today with no shadows and create a radiant blessing, then this simple challenge is for you. We will send you daily lessons from our team that will keep you motivated on your journey. It's totally free, guys, and you'll get constant content directly to you. Just sign up today at highnoon.org/challenge. That is highnoon.org/challenge. All right, back to the show.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I feel like, as I said, finding my faith through experiencing my personal things on the front line on STF was very helpful. And then actually after I did 1 year, my first year of STF, I got blessed. And once I got blessed, I decided to do a second year. Even though I was like, wow, 1 year of STF is already great, I was still focusing on becoming a professional table tennis player and things like this. And so after 1 year, I decided to do a second year and even the third year, just to work more on myself and actually be ready. Because when I decided to go to blessing, I felt called to go there, even though I knew I wasn't ready. I was ready to commit, but I wasn't ready to be a great husband, great father. And obviously you're not. You grow into it. So I was very committed, and actually I worked a lot on my faith, on my relationship with God, and on my relationship with people while I was on the program in STF, to prepare myself for different situations. And so definitely that was very, very helpful. But the reason why I think I got into troubles again for like 5 years later after the blessing it took 5 years. It's not like immediately I fell into it. It was, I felt really great for 5 years, no problem. It's because I got so busy with daily life, with studies, even mission, like it's not because you're in a mission that you're overprotected, whatever, actually you can be even more attacked. That I stopped working on myself. And because I stopped working on myself, and I got burned out because of focusing on other things, that's how I got trapped into this thing again. It's because I felt empty, I felt exhausted, and then you're so much more easily tempted to go into this. Also because I was pursuing maybe the wrong type of success. I was trying to really be successful as a table tennis player and coach. Again, even though before going to STF, I realized that's not my real purpose. Somehow I got into it again, So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. It seems like as much as you can work on yourself prior to the blessing, and as much as you can work on yourself after the blessing, it helps just constantly working on yourself. Because what you're talking about is you're still working on yourself, because you're talking about eternal vigilance and just staying on your A game, and just wherever you're at in life and you're listening to this, if you're 75 or 21, work on yourself. It'll help you and everybody around you. It's a good point. And so after all this, right, you have a foundation now of personal struggles and overcoming together with your father, together with your wife. You're also in this time, you're a youth leader, you're taking care of other people. How does all this factor into how you parent in terms of sexuality and your own comfort levels with the topic of sex? Because for some parents, maybe they had some good experiences overcoming things by themselves, but they're a nervous wreck when it comes to talking about sex with their kids, or they just it's like a different beast that they haven't tackled. So has
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
anything that you've worked on within yourself and within your wife transferred over to being parents?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, first, we we definitely believe in the education we grew up with to, keep your purity, prepare yourself for eternal blessing and things like this. So that's definitely something we pass on. I know that some second gen are like, I don't know if I actually want to teach this to my children. But for us, it's very clear we're so happy about that path that we want to share with our children. Of course, they will still make their own choices. We cannot control their choices, but it doesn't. But still, it's important to pass on what we believe is the right thing for them. I know some people say like, "Oh, I don't want to pressure them. I want them to make their own choices. So I'm not gonna tell them what they should do." Like, well, still, children need direction. And of course, they can still choose another direction if they want to, but they need direction. So that's what we're doing. What we're also deciding to do is that to talk more transparently, openly about sexuality. Yeah, for in my household, it was very taboo. I learned about sex at the radio. There was a radio. I was listening to rap in the 90s, and there's a radio station for rap. In the evening, it gets into like very not just music, but conversations. And I started to hear about this stuff, and I learned about sex in the radio from peers, not from my parents. So we decided with my children, as soon as even in primary school, already to talk about actually, you know, how do children appear? How does mommy get pregnant? And just really plainly explaining it. Of course, in the right words for kids and things like this. Um, so yeah, we decide to not just stay pure, but we also decide to explain, what is actually a sexual relationship, um, what is it for, how beautiful it can be, and actually go more down this road. And yeah, it's not always comfortable, um, but I think it's very important to, I sometimes think, um, about the story of Noah and what's Sham? Is it Sham? Kind of
Yeah,
was ashamed of his nakedness.
ham,
Something
ham.
like this. Ham.
Sham is
Sham
when
is in the French.
something,
Sorry.
Ham's actions were a sham.
That's because ham is sham in French, I think. That's why I
Ah.
said that. So anyway, I sometimes realize when I'm a bit afraid to share about these things, I'm like, we should overcome, we should overcome, feelings of shame around this topic. Otherwise you go back to, if you want to go back to the Garden of Eden before the fall and feel free to talk about this stuff and feel free about, even myself, especially when I kids were children, I didn't pay attention so much to walk naked around in the house or something like this. It really didn't matter to me. When I don't remember my parents ever doing that. They were very, uh, now of course that my daughters are getting teenagers, a little bit more careful about that, because it's an age where, but it turned very naturally. It didn't became like very naturally. It was normal to feel free when they were, young kids, and very naturally now that teenagers, it's natural to also be a bit more careful about this and not like just freely
Yeah.
go around the house.
Just healthy,
Yeah.
like you're saying, like harmonious, that it's
Yeah.
not out of shame or out of fear or anything like that. It just
Yeah, or
evolving.
other rules of how it should be or not be or things like this. Of
Yeah.
course, guiding principles, but not like strict rules. Yeah.
I like that. And I was also wondering about as a leader, right? Does your own history and the fact that you've dealt with pornography personally and that you've worked on that, does that help you in any way as a leader to be more open that you've worked on your own shadows? Or if so, like how does that help you?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely very helpful. First of all, I don't have any concept about, especially young members struggling with their faith, struggling with anything in their life, and projecting a very bad future for them. Because I know that no matter how difficult your past can be, you can actually, transcend all that and actually be a very, impactful person who can take responsibility, take leadership. Because that has been my journey, and so that definitely helps me to actually also invest time and energy to, young members who are struggling, because not only for them, but for what they can contribute. It's such an amazing investment to do. It helps me also to be very, compassionate and have empathy, and not just, judge people as soon as they're not perfect or not perfectly doing this or that, because, as I said, I have this past, but I still now always need to be eternally vigilant. So, um, that helps me to, to not have unhealthy idealistic expectations, while, of course, educating members, sharing, giving guidance about, how to reach certain ideals and standards, always, being very understanding towards, what actually people go through in reality, and not being judgmental about it, but being supportive about it. Like, oh, how can I help you? You're struggling with it? How can I help you? Not, why are you struggling with that? What's the problem with you? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
These kind of things. Like, oh, you were struggling with that. If I can help you more than I was helped in the past, or as much as I helped at certain moments in the past, I'd be so happy.
That's really true. And it's the analogy that your words just helped me to imagine is that when somebody doesn't understand the struggles of another person and they have these ideals that they're trying to convey, you end up being almost more like a guard protecting the ideals from this person. But when you're empathetic, you're acting more as a bridge. You're trying to actually help that person because you can relate to why they wouldn't jump at the opportunity to be like this version of themselves. Like, yeah, even something as basic as, hey, why are you locking yourself in your room? Why don't you go out and do stuff? If you don't understand what depression is, it's just like, well, you should just stop being lazy and just, no, you gotta, it's you're pushing them further and further away from the ideal in many cases if you lack the requisite empathy and sympathy for that person. So yeah, that's really cool. Because honestly speaking, there was it's not just our movement. I think it was leadership in general until very recently. Even in the corporate world, it's like you have to fake it until you make it, and then just keep on faking it, even if you've already made it, just to keep it. Like a CEO, I don't know what I'm doing, but I can't let anybody know because otherwise I'll get fired. And so I'll take the whole ship down with me. How many companies have failed gloriously because of somebody protecting their shadows, right? Whereas in this era, you can actually leverage your mistakes for the benefit of others and become an even greater leader. That was the kind of disparity in the past that doesn't seem to exist as much. It's still there in the air, but that you are stronger by revealing your weaknesses, not weaker, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think we're really in a time of leadership shift, humanity shift, in terms of being vulnerable, being authentic, which is a more feminine. We're also in the era of feminine leadership, which can be woman leadership, but doesn't end it. It can be also man just having a more feminine approach to leadership, which is where it is to be more vulnerable and things like this. And just yesterday, at one moment, I was like, wow, there's so many things going on. And, immediately I wrote a message to the former national leader, David Perry, and who is also my mentor. It's like, David, do you have time to talk tomorrow? Which is today, actually. So I'm going to, I feel overwhelmed, So, and I'm very transparent about this. I'm talking about in this podcast, I give weekly guidance to members and friends, and I'm very vulnerable about my struggles, but also my lessons through the struggles I have, through the help I seek out from other people. And I think that's very, as you said, it's very powerful. It's very important, and especially, drowning in your own struggles when people are kind of counting on you, that's not helping anyone. Yeah, definitely. And I used to do that a lot, and I still need to be careful again about it because I learned already to seek out help. But sometimes I'm afraid to ask people help. I'm able to put pressure on them, but it's their choice, and sometimes they're so happy if they can help actually.
Yeah.
So it's very important to seek out help, and to be vulnerable about your difficulties, your shortcomings when it gets too much for you and things like this. And not being afraid that this looks powerful today, authentic power, as I say, not the the fake power. People can sense it, fake power. So, well,
Yeah, it's really true. It's beautiful. Yeah, because to be honest, even in the past, I think that was the only way to survive, because it was a more kind of brutal time. Even in the 80s, I just think back to like
Yeah.
corporate America and how dog eat
Mm,
dog it. And, you know, it's not like corporations are nice and perfect or anything like that, but it just seemed to be the overarching theme of what it means to be a man or strong has changed. And it doesn't
mm,
mean to be filled with baggage and to air out all of your issues, but it's to admit when you don't know what you're doing and seek for help, and not see that as a
mm.
weakness but as a strength. Because yeah, our world would be a
Yeah.
lot better if people could just realize that help, we're only strong when we're connected as people, and we cannot be connected if we don't know what's going on in each other's lives. And shame compartmentalizes our souls from each other. They cannot connect because they
Mm.
that, like you experienced with your father and your sister, opening that door allows for healing to happen. And that's what we see time and
Mm.
again with the people in our groups and stuff. When they open up to their families, it is the scariest thing. Like, imagine all you're doing is telling your dad, your example, something that you did, but you've wrapped up so much emotion and fear that you're opening your mouth and nothing's coming out because it's at the level of paralyzing. And that's how much it's built up in your psyche and in your heart. That's crazy. And of course, the only
Yeah.
catharsis is a release, like you said, but there's got to be a person on the other end of that release.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, definitely. And and not realizing that 98%, of teenagers at my age are struggling with it, thinking that I'm the only one. That of course creates that extra blockage.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So
Mm.
let's get into let's get you hyped. I want to get you nice and hyped. Talking about the ideal, because I think this kind
Mm.
of came out a little bit in the 24-hour summit, but the idea of you're in charge in many ways of your community in France, of helping families to reach their potential, in a sense, like you could phrase it like that. And we're trying to build this ideal, this channel gook that is formulating. We're all trying to figure out what it means. Are there going to be airplanes? Are they going to can we just teleport? You know, a lot of things to figure out. But where does sex fit into channel gook and all of this? Where does that come into you building the ideal in terms of practically how you are the kind of leader, but also in terms of your vision in the future? Where does sex fit into channel gook?
Yeah, I mean, where it fits in is really the fact that to understand how how important and sacred it is, you know, but it's not because it's sacred that it's like taboo, like um we need to find a way where build a society where sex is not hidden like it was many ages of history, and now where you see advertisement everywhere of half naked woman for a yogurt. I don't know if you have that in America, and we have that in France, or for whatever perfume, whatever advertisement you have, or you have now you have all kind of people on Instagram. I'm more a Facebook person. When I go to Instagram, I think everybody puts themselves half naked there. I don't know why. That must be part of the culture.
Yeah.
And even sometimes I get very explicit accounts, following me on Instagram, and I'm like signaling them to Instagram. It's like, wow, this person is explicitly really like, and then sometimes I get a response from Instagram. It's like, no, it's fine. There's no problem with their account. We don't see a sexual intercourse on their account, so it's fine. I'm like, oh my God. So, we need to find a way to portray sex as something beautiful, but, in the right setting. And I think that's very important because that's what family is based on. If you mess up sex, you mess up families. It's not just messing up sex. It's not just about failing in following some rule. It's because failing in sex, whether it's before or after marriage or within marriage, creates just so much mess in the couple, beyond the couple, with the kids and everything. you know I saw some statistics, and most likely you know them even better than me, that in 50% of divorce cases there's some porn issue in there, and 50%, like this is huge. So it means like how you can't really fix the marriage and family issues that we have in society without fixing the sex problem, whether it's being, of course, on one hand, of course, being loyal to your partner, but also, overcoming all the struggles with porn, and also, and we need to fix all these industries who are making so much money, to produce, to destroy. We sometimes we think like, we think about the future world, and I believe in the, sometimes people think in France we don't work enough. We have a 35-hour week officially. That's nonsense in America. Of course, if you are a leader, a manager, you go beyond the 35 hours usually. But I think in China Good, you shouldn't work more than 20 hours, and that's not necessary, because we would just focusing on building healthy, effective things, and nobody would be working on crazy, destructive things like porn or other kind of stuff like junk food or whatever you name it. That people work hours for destructive stuff, and then they have other people who are working hours to trying to fix the destructive stuff. So there's like, at least 2/3 of our work we can put in the bin. Like stop doing the destructive stuff, stop needing to fix the destructive stuff, and there's only 1/3. I don't know the numbers. It's just I'm making it up.
Sure.
And there's only 1/3 of workload that is left to just build the constructive, necessary stuff that is beautiful. Yeah. So that's how I see it happening, and definitely sex is part of something that can make the world very beautiful if it's, if it helps really partners to connect very deeply, build a harmonious and loving family, and it can be very destructive when it's not managed well.
Yeah, well put. I think it's interesting, because what I was getting from what you're saying is that it's not necessarily sex that's the problem, or, in all these, let's say, divorces, but it's inextricably linked to a part of the problem, a big part of the problem. It's connected to everything, the good and the bad. Got it. And so I guess lastly, what gets you really fired up about the future? Like, what gets you out of bed and fighting for a better day? Because you are not only responsible for your family, but for many families now. And there's got to be something that, I know that you're the type of person that works constantly on motivation and having clarity and vision. So what is it that you're really fighting for out there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, what I'm fighting for is that we can, in our movement, can embody our ideals so much, and that the result, the fruits of it are just so inspiring, so attractive, so magnetic, that we don't have to fight anymore to, try to convince people or to defend our religious freedom, or to, do, which maybe is necessary now, and that's okay, but I'm more, fired up to actually build something where all these things are, how what's the right word? It's like, they're basically not necessary, they're, because it's so clear. It's so clear. People want to know, and I experience this on a small basis right now. I share openly about my faith with other coaches, and I share about different experiences. I shared recently about my experience in Munich with True Mother and things like this. I don't try to convince them anyway. But recently I had a friend, a coach, who I shared about, I told her I couldn't come to a meeting, and because of a songwa. And then she's like, oh, what's a songwa? I explained what's a songwa. And she was so inspired. It's like, wow, this is how you, bury people and things like this. And that you believe, that's so amazing. I need to come, like, I never thought about. And then she came to the inauguration of it as a national leader. And then she came to the Women's Feder events and things like this. And then recently I helped a friend coach to liberate one of his friends who went to spiritual. And I just naturally shared about this concept. And he was like, yeah, let's do it,
Just be careful who you share that story with, because people are going to start using sangwas as a witnessing tool now.
No, yeah. No, it's true. Yeah, no, that was, no, it's not me who was, that's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point. It's not about pushing or convincing. It's about just sharing And the people you talk to decide what attracts them. It's not you who decide. I talked with a friend about Munich and how we did all the Christian worship. I shared the playlist with her because I knew that she was interested in Christian worship. And then she told me, wow, I was listening to that one song that you sang in Munich for like 3 weeks, like it's just in my head and everything. And then she told me, next thing she told me is like, can I come to one of your events of your community, or is it like closed? You're not allowed if you're not a member. And I was like,
You need to know the handshake.
and I was like, and so, that's what I believe in, that we become, by being authentic, but also by trying really hard to embody ideals without faking it, but also by being authentic, because I'm also authentic about how our community is not perfect, with my friends.
Yeah.
Actually just being so attractive, that we are able to really influence the culture of our world in such a powerful way. So that gets me fired up. So embodying authentically and being attractive, not in like attractive, like I put some perfume and makeup on, but like through authenticity, through
That's very
integrity, like
French.
the value
Yeah.
we have in high noon,
More perfume per square foot than any other country in the world. No, I love that. It's an unrelenting commitment to truth and honesty while simultaneously holding a vision that is so captivating and clear, and that these two things will come together eventually if we can just hold on, right, to our mistakes and repair them, and as a part of a larger vision. It seems like two opposite energies, and usually you fit into one of two camps. You're either an idealist or you're very practically minded in our movement, right? There's people like, oh, we need to change leadership or blah, blah, blah. And they think very practically. And other people are like, no, just pray, this kind of stuff. And it really seems like it's the hybrid. It's accessing both of those aspects within ourselves, integrating those, and in our family, that neither one is sufficient. And that seems actually to be out in the zeitgeist of our movement, is that there's a call for people asking us to work more with chumbo and stuff like that. And we're starting these discussions of like, how does this work? Because everybody in High Noon is a part of our movement and we all believe in it. We lead with practicality and we leave the spiritual side to people like Jumbo. But there is like this middle ground that can kind of exist more. And so it seems to be out there. And it seems like you are a great person to kind of exemplify this harmony of two seemingly disparate, energies, I guess.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there's a tendency to really harmonize our efforts. Chumala talks about spirit and truth. When you can add spirit, truth, and maybe action, to really have all the different aspects. I think you can add connection, because a connection with people, and if you have such an holistic approach, I think there's nothing that can stop us. I like to call myself a practical dreamer. You talk about
Nice.
practicality and being a dreamer. I feel like a practical dreamer, and I think I'm not the only one. And I think
Sounds like a
we need this
song.
kind of and we need both. We need people who are hybrid, but we need people who are very specific, because they're expert in one way or the other as well. And so, I was talking about how I'm creating teams in France, so it's not everything on me, but I'm also creating team songs because we need different things. So on one side, I created like an overall national committee where we're overseeing all kind of things, but then I created a prayer group, a national prayer group, with whom I share sometimes very sensitive issues to pray for, or very important events or projects that we're working on. And every week I update them on what's happening. And I can tell you the effect of prayers, when you have very intentional about it and you're actually also working on it, just praying and hoping for things to happen, but you see that the actions bear fruit so easily. I can immediately see the effect of both the actions, but also the prayer behind it, where sometimes when you work for something, but you don't pray about it, it's like you're just spinning wheels. You always get stuck. And when you pray about it, but you don't act, obviously nothing's going to happen. But when you do both, amazing things are happening. And this is what's happening here now. Of course, there's still a long way to go, but I can see that the progress is in motion. And that's amazing to witness that.
Yeah, that's a great place to kind of leave this, because that encapsulates kind of who you are, and the essence that you're bringing to this equation, which is, what is it? Practical dreamer. Is that what you said?
Yes, practical dreamer.
Practical dreamer. Yeah. And that's, I mean, true parents are way up there, right? With, okay, we're going to do these wild conditions, right? But we're also going to fund them. We're going to build the actual buildings. So yeah, everybody, this is a great call to action to find out which your dominant side, which one is your dominant side. Is it, hoping and praying and wishing and meditating and like the ethereal, or is it practical? And it's most likely that one is more accentuated than the other. And just the idea is to be a little bit more balanced so that you can see the miracles happen through your actions. Actions are necessary, but then also the spiritual side is also equally necessary. It's harmoniously. So yeah, thanks, Rafael. Thank you for opening up. Thank you for finally coming on officially to the podcast. And yeah, thank you for opening up your soul so that we can enter for an hour.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It was really a pleasure to discuss these points.
Yeah.
And yeah, also for those who are listening, feel free, if you want to go deeper on certain topics, feel free. If you feel like, wow, I feel I resonate so much with this, but I don't have somebody to talk about these ideas, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to connect with you. And yeah, and also for those who are struggling right now with porn, whether you're a teenager, a young adult, or a blessed family man, don't stay by yourself. Connect to someone, connect to a high noon group. I've been coaching a lot of people, and every time I coach people who had these issues, we always work together with also them joining a high noon group, and the combination of those is very, very powerful, very helpful. So this is definitely also one recommendation I would give.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy. Yeah, God bless you and all your work there in France.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks, buddy.
All the best. Thank you for everything you do. Bye-bye.
Hey, did you know that our team wants to do more events? Well, if you want to bring the High Noon message to your community or group, then let us know and we'll try to work something out. There's a simple application that you can fill out right now at highnoon.org/invite. And one of our team members will get back to you to see what's possible. That's highnoon.org/invite. All right, see you in the next episode.